is scheduled for 2 hours on code of ethics. So our speaker is Vaze sir. We all very well know him from 40 years or so. And also we are also joined with our chief guest, Anuj Goyal sir, who is chairman of the Ethical Standards Board. So before we'll start with our program with our motto song. You need not stand. Please place your hand on the heart. Ramesh, please play the motto song.
Ramesh, can you check once? Voice is not audible, Ramesh.
य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति कामं 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 कामोषो पुरुषो निर्विमाणः निर्विमाणः तदेव शुक्रं तद्ब्रह्मा तद्ब्रह्मा तदेवामृतमुच्यते तस्मिन् लोकः शतः सर्वे तदूनात्यपि कश्चन एतद्वैता 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 एतद्वैता.
Thank you one and all. I request the chairman of the branch, Nettar Kishore sir, to give his opening remarks.
Yes, good evening, all of you. A chief guest of the session virtually, CA Anuj Goyal ji. Speaker of the session, Vaje ji, CA Vaje ji. Past chairman of the branch, senior members of the profession, and my dear chartered accountants. Good evening, and I welcome you all to this session. Ethical behavior is very much essential in every individual's life. Now, for chartered accountant, our institute has brought in code of ethics so that all of us would behave professionally in an ethical manner. I request our chairman sir of Ethical Standards Board to share with us and throw some light on the latest happenings in this field. And also I request our session speaker with regard to nuances of this code of ethics. Sir, over to you, sir. Well, sir.
Presentation. Pitch karte hain.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, our honorable chairman of Vijayawada branch, very prominent branch of the southern region. We are, of course, having CACM our honorable guest speaker, and very prominent resource person, my very good friend, and of course, the branch, CA Srinivas Rao ji, and of course, Mr. Jayanas, Secretary Vijayawada branch, and all the respected chartered accountants present here. I am really very happy that Team Vijayawada today is having this very important webinar on code of ethics, and we are having the best of the resource person, best of the faculty today, and I'm quite confident that Vaje will certainly see that the best of the chartered accountants of the world, the members of the ICI, how we can, of course, update ourselves about the latest developments in the code of ethics, and of course, we are very well aware that code of ethics is supposed to be changed at the earliest, and we are deliberating in ethical standard code also, and the council is then supposed to take the decision. We will of course communicate to all of you. We will expose the proposed changes in code of ethics, and we are trying our level best, Vaje sir, to see that how we can open up the profession for the chartered accountants according to the changed circumstances, according to the changed scenario. And you must be very well aware, friends, that we have now allowed the practicing chartered accountants to have income from future and options, to have income from derivatives, which was not allowed earlier. In the same manner, now a practicing chartered accountant can very well be the whole-time director in a management consultancy, private limited company, and can draw salary also. So we are trying to see that how we can make the life of the chartered accountant very simple, and you must be aware that Ethical Standard Board now has developed CA Connect portal, and in this CA Connect portal, if one will be going to caconnect.ici.org, one can register on the CA Connect portal with the practicing chartered accountant, and can upload the profile also. And we are ensuring that in each and every part of the world, if anybody searches on any search engine, whether it is Google or any other search engine, then only and only the name of the chartered accountants of that particular field, that particular area, should reflected on that search engine, and then the name of any other professional should be reflected. So I'm quite confident that all of us will certainly see that the code of ethics, which is very, very important for the profession, for the nation, and our chartered accountants are following the code of ethics in the best possible manner. But what are the expectations of the society? What are the expectations of the ICI? What are the expectations of the regulators? And what are important things which the chartered accountants are supposed to take care? What are the provisions of the code of ethics which one is supposed to keep in mind while performing their duties as a chartered accountant, whether in industry or whether in consultancy or practice. So Mr. Vaje sir will certainly cover all those things. I will not be taking further time. I compliment team Vijayawada and Vaje sir for being very, very active, and I once again welcome all our honorable delegates from each and every part of the country and outside country also. I think we are having the delegates. So I once again welcome all of you on behalf of the ICI and as Chairman Ethical Standard Board, ICI Dr. Anuj Goyal. Once again, welcome you all. Thank you. And I wish all of you a very happy Chartered Accountants Day, 76th Chartered Accountants Day. We will be celebrating day after tomorrow. And we are completing 75 glorious years of the formation of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your message. Thanks for joining virtually for this session. So to move forward in this web seminar, let me introduce Vaje sir. Really, we don't need much introduction of Vaje sir, but I take this time to professionally or like formally introduce him. Sir qualified in 1980 and he's having 40 years of practical experience. His active participation in the work of professional bodies of, for CAs, delivered lectures and written articles on taxation, banking, and allied subject, also on code of ethics for CAs. Delivered lectures and written articles on Valmiki, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, and other social subjects. Is also anchored for musical and other cultural programs. Actively conducted with arts and literature, directed plays in Sanskrit language, and also worked for promotion of Sanskrit language. He is also a president of Maharashtra Seva Sangh Molnad. It's an 84-year reputed organization. He is also president of Sanskrit Bharati Konkan region. He is also director for Janakalyan Shahakari Bank Limited. And he also held many responsible positions in many organizations, and is also recipient of Yoga Mitra Award from Yoga Vidyaniketan, Navi Mumbai. Is a recipient of Best Social Worker Award from Senior Citizens Association from Jal District Award for the Best Futuring of BCA General. Recently, in February 2024, he awarded for the contribution to the promotion of Sanatana Dharma values given by Siddha Sri Kalika Dham Peet Mathura. By this small introduction, it's up to you, sir. Please go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Jayan, for very kind words of introduction. Well, the chairman of Vijayawada branch, who interacted with me recently for last week or so, Vitta Ravi Kishorji, then today's chief guest, none other than Dr. Anuj G. Goyal, whom we know for, or rather I know for many years, many decades rather, as he rightly mentioned, and we are privileged to have him. Then Mr. Srinivasa Rao, I think a couple of years ago, he was instrumental in bringing me here for the audience of Vijayawada. And then, of course, Mr. Jayant was kind enough to introduce me. And the respected members of your Vijayawada branch, it's really my pleasure to be here before you to deliver some thoughts on the Code of Ethics, because the subject is so vast that to do justice within a short span of time is really very difficult. But as Dr. Anuj rightly mentioned, the most important thing is that the institute is trying to be with the times, in the sense that we are not sticking to the old values, are the old only. But it is not our endeavor, it is not the institute's endeavor that the old rules, you should always stick to them despite any changes in the time. So he has rightly pointed out that we are making more and more things permissible, and so that the chartered accountants do not feel that it's an injustice to them and they have no level playing field with the other professionals. Just as other professionals are having a lot of liberty to do many other things, of course, sticking to the basic core values of the ethics, that is rather there is no compromise on that. But apart from that, there are many liberties which the institute is seriously considering, and that's a very welcome news. So, as the motto song, it implies that Ya Esha Supteshu Jagarti means he who is awake when the world around is asleep. And in the tax return season, we experience this really practically, because we are keeping late hours. We sit in the overnight in our offices, but the persons for whom we are working, they are enjoying elsewhere. So in real terms also, we are Ya Eshu Supteshu Jagarti means we have to keep ourselves awake, ourselves and our staff as well. But then the meaning or the implication of this particular message or the motto, which was suggested to us by Maharshi Aurobindo, is that it is from Kathopanishad. And it means that our CA profession is compared to the ultimate truth in life. That is the God or the Atman or the Brahman. So the purest thing, so chartered accountant is expected to be the purest of the people. And that is why society has great expectations from us. It is for us to introspect whether we are worthy of that. And of late, the things are so happening that people may lose, rather chartered accountancy profession is losing its credibility. That's the fear sometimes it is expressed. So that is the apprehension of many people. Because many things, there are few quacks. By and large, chartered accountants are quite honest, quite submissive. They don't rather voluntarily indulge into manipulative things. But the clients and the circumstances are such that they are forced to do certain things which are then described as unethical. So it is the pure helplessness because we are in Kali Yuga. Now, friends, although I am speaking on code of ethics, which is rather a philosophical subject, I assure you that it won't be a boring sermon as such. It won't be a pravachan. It will be very much lively. It will be very much interesting, because so far I had the occasion to handle really hundreds of disciplinary cases, and that is why I'll be sharing the live experiences of those things, so that the things will become more interesting. And the maxim which I believe firmly is that example is not the best way of teaching, it is the only way of teaching. I'm not claiming that I'm teaching you something, but I'm sharing with you certain experiences, which is a big lesson to all of us. So let me first start with the first mantra that I give for the audience always, is that in the profession, never ever do anything which is in good faith. Absolutely in good faith, that you should never do. You should not trust anyone, because in Kali Yuga, no relationships are permanent. No relationship is permanent. Therefore, I have handled cases filed by spouses against each other, by brothers, by sisters, by father against son, by son against father, by partner against partner. All sorts of relationships are covered. And therefore, never be under a sweet impression that our relationship is sort of so permanent that we cannot trouble or we cannot cause any nuisance to the other. When it comes to the selfishness, ultimately anyone totally forgets the relationship and he becomes hostile at times. I'll share with you the first instance which I have come across about this good faith. Friends, husband and wife, both were chartered accountants. They were practicing independently as proprietors. They were not partners as such. And there was a small cooperative housing society of which the wife did audit for 3 years. Then there is a rotation in the cooperative sector. Therefore, the next 3 years audit was done by the husband. In the 8th year, there was a divorce petition between the two, which has become very common reality nowadays in the society. And after the divorce, the wife filed a complaint to the institute saying that the husband had taken her audit without obtaining her NOC, without communicating in writing to her. To this extent, people go. And therefore, you have to be absolutely cautious. You have to be always on your guard as to anybody is telling you something. What is most important and what is most warranted in our profession is the professional skepticism. The question should arise in your mind and question should be expressed. Don't take anything for granted. I'll share with you another example. One chartered accountant was sitting in his office and one lady comes. She was the daughter of his proprietor client of whom he was doing the tax audit. Now that lady enters and she requests him to give an attested ITR of her husband and of her mother-in-law. Now this chartered accountant had not filed the returns of her husband and mother-in-law, but she had brought the hard copies. So he compared them, he checked them, he verified them on his computer because the reference numbers were there, and he verified and he said that those are quite all right, and therefore he attested them in a proper manner. Now, he attested in a proper manner in the sense our institute has given guidelines that you cannot simply attest it as a true copy, but you have to sort of qualify it or you have to give a disclaimer that you are simply attesting it based on the income tax return filed with the income tax department. So it's not that you are certifying the income, but you are only certifying the computation of income, and that is also as per the what has been submitted to the IT authority. So this is extremely important and he certified it in a proper manner. Within a month's time, he received a complaint from that lady's husband saying as to how he parted with the attested ITR without his written authority to his wife. Remember friends, because the wife had filed a complaint of domestic violence against him in the court of law. Such is the relationship, such is the scenario of relationships in today's Kali Yuga. And therefore, don't take anything for granted. Many chartered accountants boast, rather. They say that I have been handling this particular client's work for more than 30 years. And they claim that I am like a family member to them. I always suggest to them that please increase your fees by 5% and then see whether you still continue to be the family member of those clients. So please don't be under a very sweet impression that your clients consider you to be very close to them. And most of the things, friends, these disciplinary cases, because I will be dealing with the disciplinary mechanism and the case studies. So most of the complaints which are coming, more than 90% are the complaints arising out of some dispute of some other people. So they feel that chartered accountant being the softest target, the scapegoat, if we harass him, then he will be able to exert pressure on the other party. And that is why most of the complaints are with that direction, with that motive. Unfortunately, chartered accountants today are not in a position to have any influence on their clients, because the client's loyalty is also not as it used to be earlier. And therefore, friends, the most rather disturbing part about our profession is that we don't have any unity. And that is why people are taking us for granted. Now, it's good that we are celebrating our CA day after. And it's really a matter of pride that we have completed 75 glorious years. The question is whether that glory can still continue, and that because I'm very much apprehending that glory may be at stake. Just now it is rather under a threat, because the times are changing. People are considering chartered accountancy profession as if something they can take it for granted. Many people say ये काम नहीं हो रहा है ना, तो किसी चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट को पकड़ के कर डाल. That is the wording used by the people in the society. On the other hand, society expects that the Chartered Accountants Institute has to be more strict and they must be more rigorously enforcing the code of ethics. So they keep on complaining, people keep on complaining that our institute is very lenient. They say that they take a long time in disposing the complaint, and then the punishments awarded are very mild. Therefore, it is the society's demand, public at large expect that the code of ethics should be enforced very strictly. See, friends, whenever there is any scam or scandal, the first reaction of the public is that auditor kya kar raha tha? As if all scams are done by the auditor. They feel that the auditors are masterminding all frauds and scandals. This is an image which is really disturbing, because a few quacks maybe in our profession have really done that way. And then, friends, the perception of the government also is rather disturbing, which we are all experiencing. And unfortunately, we lack courage. There is a crisis of courage everywhere in our profession. To the clients also, we cannot be very firm. To the government also, we cannot be very assertive. Nowhere we are assertive. And that is why people are under an impression, and people are rather developed a perception that chartered accountants are the people who manage everything. I am rather saying all this very boldly and bluntly because I don't like to speak only goody things. It's very easy to say that there is a dignity, there is a glory, but then at the average level of chartered accountancy, what he is facing, I can very much understand that, because the manners in which the complaints are coming to for me to handle, I feel pity for our professionals that they are not in a position to assert anywhere. There is no case where chartered accountant is saying no. Once we learn saying no, then our image will improve. But here, whatever chartered account the clients ask us to do, we are willing to do, because we have always an apprehension, we have always a feeling of insecurity that if I say no, some other chartered accountant will pick it up. Another disturbing factor which the government is thinking is that so far in our country, so many scams have taken place. During 75 years, maybe 150 or 200 big scams that have taken place. But there is not a single scam which has been exposed by the chartered accountants audit. I mean, the audit done by the chartered accountants. And therefore, they say that we are simply accommodating the clients. And this image is, friends, rather very much posing a threat to the continuity of the glory of our profession. And therefore, unless we introspect very strictly, unless we have a very strict self-criticism, I don't think we will be able to improve and we will be able to brighten this image. Therefore, friends, about ethics, let me say that ethics is nothing but a set of moral values. Everybody is aware of that. About ethics, one interesting thing you should always remember that you are either ethical or unethical. There are only two extreme possibilities. There is no such thing as in between. I mean, you cannot say by and large I am ethical. When you say by and large I am ethical, it only means that at times you are willing to compromise on your ethics. Therefore, you have to be ethical everywhere. In fact, recently there was a High Court decision where the issue arose as to whether a chartered accountants are bound by the ethical code whenever and wherever he is doing anything. So whether it is necessary to verify whether he was present in a particular situation and he did commit certain thing in his capacity as a chartered accountant, or wherever he goes, like he may be traveling, he may be on a holiday tour, he may be attending some private function, whether the ethics will apply to him at that point of time also. Take a simple example. If a chartered accountant, suppose, misbehaves with a female, the question is whether we should see whether he did it in his office or in his chartered accountant friend's office or in the client's office or in a CA conference or where. Or even at any place he goes and he does such things, whether he is still bound by the ethics. And the High Court said, yes, wherever he goes, the ethics are binding on him. And the reason is also very logical and justifiable. What one needs to see is, ultimately, if he behaves in any such manner, then the press and the social media actually gives a bad publicity to the fact that he is a chartered accountant and he has committed some such thing. For example, the press will report that the chartered accountant held for bribing or bribery, or chartered accountant is held for the masterminding of some fraud. So these where the chartered accountant image is highlighted, projected, and that brings disrepute to the profession. So it's not the question of whether he committed a particular thing in his capacity as a chartered accountant or otherwise, but the social media and the press projects the fact that he is a chartered accountant. That means, on the other hand, it implies that chartered accountants are, the society expects that the chartered accountants should be honest enough, should be well behaved enough, and they should never commit such things. So in a way, it's a compliment that society's expectation from chartered accountants is very high, because academically, it is one of the toughest courses in the country. So we slog for it. Unfortunately, the course or the profession is such that every time the changes are there, and those changes, we are keeping track when your age advances is also very difficult. But then, as far as ethical things are concerned, it is one disturbing fact I can share with you. In a very reputed organization, there was a checklist for issuing certain very important certificates. And there the last line was reading like this, that please avoid bringing chartered accountant certificates as the same are often found unreliable. So this is the perception of the public about the profession. Actually, I wonder whether I should share all these things on this forum, but unless we have very strict and blunt about it, we are not going to improve. So the few quacks are spoiling the image of our profession, and therefore we should be united enough. We should have absolute solidarity amongst ourselves so that we can fight against these things. Remember, friends, if any lawyer's image is tarnished in the press, the entire lawyer's community stands behind him. But our chartered accountants, innocent chartered accountants, are getting victimized for the things which they have never done. They are not capable of committing such things, and still they are victimized, they are arrested, they are behind bars, and nobody comes to protect them. Recently, I have come across an illustration where a politically influential person harassed a chartered accountant like anything. In fact, he alleged that the chartered accountant stole a big amount of cash from his house. And that big amount of cash, he alleged that the chartered accountant carried that bag on his shoulder and ran away. And can you imagine the amount? Amount involved was 10 crore rupees. Now, who can any person, it is humanly impossible thing. But still, the government, the police, and all the people were against him and they victimized him. And no one came forward from the profession to protect him. That's a pity, friends. That's a pity. We must be absolutely introspecting, and if you are solid enough, then no one dare touch us in this fashion, or no one dare actually harass us in this fashion. But unfortunately, that is lacking. I always experience that even auto rickshaw walas and bhaji walas, sabji walas are better organized than us, because we lack unity. And if for any valid reason, if you say no for signing any audit, there are 100 others, I can assure you that 100 other chartered accountants will sign that balance sheet. They will never even bother to ask as to why he has said no. And unless we do that, and perhaps I think in the towns like Vijayawada, there is a better scope for such unity. In metropolitan cities, the people are so scattered and so widely scattered that bringing them together is very, very much a challenge. But we must have a proper code of it. And then many people have another perception, chartered accountant. They say that why this burden of ethics only on us? Why other professionals, they are behaving in any manner they like? Doctors have no ethics, lawyers have no scruples, architects also behave whatever way they like. Why this burden only on chartered accountants? Now here also we should have a very positive frame of mind. Actually, the very foundation of our profession is our credibility, our signature. In fact, somebody has said that RBI governor जैसा अपना balance sheet पे अपना signature का value is much more than many other signatures which are put in this country, because ultimately the entire financial affairs of a particular entity, sometimes even a government organization or even the government, we are certifying. Therefore, we are financial police, and therefore the expectations are very high. We cannot afford to compromise on this. But whereas the today's image is that chartered accountants are submissive, they are accommodative, they will say always yes to any client and to try to do anything. And therefore, remember always that ethics is our shield to protect us. If you have behaved ethically, if you have done the job properly and ethically, now yesterday there were standards on audit. If you have followed the standards, then no one can harass you. No one can file a complaint against you, or even if he files a complaint, you can counter it very strongly. But unfortunately, we have to compromise, and there are many practical problems. I understand. Remember, friends, although I am speaking in this fashion, it's not the case that I have fallen from the heaven. I am very average, ordinary chartered accountant, although I have surrendered my COP recently. But still, I was always a very ordinary and average chartered accountant who has faced all the practical problems while setting up the profession and also doing it throughout my 40 years of profession. So it's not, but ultimately that your strong desire should be there, that you should command respect. And that respect is commanded only if you are strict in the discipline, you are strict in following the guidelines of the institute, and you are strictly following the paperwork. Now, all of you will be wondering as to why I am not showing the PPT. But can I just...
Sir, should I share the PPT or what should I do? I have PPT.
You please go on, sir. Are you logged in with another computer?
Yeah, it's my friend's computer, partners.
Yeah.
But
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because if you
Huh.
tell me the name by which you have logged in, I will make you a co-host so that you will be able... yes, it's visible, sir.
Visible.
Visible,
Huh?
right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go on,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah. Because let me also clarify that I don't stick to the PPT much, because I have so many other experiences to share that this PPT is just for the namesake. But can anyone operate it from the... I'll operate it. So go ahead. Now, next. This motto we have already seen. Next. Introductory remarks which I have already explained to you. The eternal vigilance is the cost of independence, friends. Because see, in our standards, the first standard is that of independence. Now, unfortunately, independence is a myth in our profession, because the person who is paying us fees and our survival is dependent on him. We can't afford to be too independent. So sometimes I feel that it is deceiving oneself that you are independent. So, but nevertheless, yes, we do acknowledge the value of this independent standard. And then for that, now if you want to remain independent, the cost is that it is eternal vigilance. For example, if for our country, our soldiers are always vigilant there on the borders, and therefore we can afford to enjoy our day-to-day life. So if you want to remain independent, you have to be vigilant. And that is what precisely the institute expects, that you do it diligently. Remember, friends, when there are frauds, our institute is kind enough that they never say that our chartered accountant was involved in the fraud, because they say that they don't have jurisdiction to decide it. That jurisdiction lies with the criminal courts. But our institute is, in all fairness, they say that he was not, a particular member or a respondent was not involved in the fraud per se, but ultimately his negligence, gross negligence, has allowed the people to commit the fraud. So this is very important. So what our institute charges us and holds us guilty for is not our involvement. Many people try to say, sir, हमने ₹1 भी ऐसा चोरी का उठाया नहीं है, वगैरह वगैरह. They try to argue. I said that no one is alleging that you have committed a fraud. Question is whether you are vigilant enough, you are diligent enough. Because see, friends, times are changing. As Dr. Anuj rightly mentioned, that times are changing and we have to cope up with that. We have to keep pace with the time. But then previously our one maxim was that a chartered accountant or the auditor is only a watchdog and not a bloodhound. Now this principle is diluted, because see, ultimately, previously when this principle was set, that time the time was different. That time we used to spend more energy in verifying the vouchers, in verifying the arithmetical accuracy. And that time there was a time when I remember that when I was doing articles, or when I passed my CA, even tallying of trial balance was a big celebration. But now you are relieved of those mundane things of arithmetical accuracy and all. So everything is now available on the tip of your finger, and everything, the balance sheet comes to you every minute. And therefore you don't have to exert too much of energy, time and effort on the arithmetic accuracy or the routine things. And that is why the government rightly expects that you should apply all the time which is available with you on something creative. And that creative means the professional skepticism. You should be inquisitive. Ethics is nothing but you have to perform your duty in such a manner that, since we are fully financial police, although we don't initiate the thing on the basis that there is some fraud or suspicion, but then whenever there is something to trigger that, the most important thing that is gaining importance, and yesterday whatever the standard on audit, third party evidence. Because you cannot just rely on the books, because on the computer anything can be generated and everything looks very nice. The question is whether about the content of it you are inquisitive enough, whether what the client has done, whether you are asking him questions, and whether that is recorded. Work should not only be done, but it should be seen that it is done. There are two maxims which in the next slide perhaps it will come. The work should not only be done, but it should be seen that it is done. Let me come to the source code of it. The need, as I told you, that the society expects that the code should be enforced very strictly, because and yes, friends, the unfortunate part is that in economics we learned that there is a difference between need and want. People, for example, we need to do exercise every day, we need to study, but we don't want to study because of our laziness. Similarly, the society needs the audit, but society does not want the audit, especially business community. And therefore, business community expects that the chartered accountant will try to cover up all their lapses. This is the expectation gap. No one finds value in what you are rendering as an auditor. Therefore, they say that whatever you are doing, all this is a headache to us. We are least bothered about our accounting standards and standards on auditing. You do it for your safety. For us, there is no value addition. For us, the only value that you are giving us is the compliance. Remember, this is still the perception of the people. And therefore, this outsider's perception is, so here, the sources of Code of Ethics, which perhaps you will find that this is something like a pravachan, but it is not a sermon. It is very much with the times. that there are, in Taittiriya Upanishad, there used to be 3 messages that used to be given by the rishis or the sages to their pupils. And those messages were Satyam Vada, that means speak the truth. And we are very much concerned with the certification as true and fair. So the truth is very much close to our heart. It should be close to our heart. Whenever we are deviating from truth, that means we are deviating from ethics. So that is the first maxim, Satyam Vada. Then Dharmam Chara. Now Dharmam is not the religious thing that we envisage. For example, performing puja and worship. No, that way. Dharmam Chara means perform your duty religiously. Follow the rules very religiously and strictly. That is Dharmam Chara. And the last one, Swadhyayat Ma Pramadha, that means never commit any default or laziness in the continuous study or upgradation. That means that is our CP hours. So now those CP hours, remember friends, were contemplated in our country thousands of years ago. When the students completed 12 years of education in the ashrama or the hermitage of the rishi or the guru, then Guru never said that all your education is complete. They said that this is only the beginning. Now you enter the regular life of Grahasthashrama and keep yourself updated always. That is the message given by in our ancient scriptures also. And therefore, although ethics, means, as I said, ethics are as old as human civilization, what we are learning is only codified version of ethics. They are not divorced from the basic values of ethics. Now, the next slide, and now here I will share with you one more very important case, which is not there in the slide, but now see, these are 2 maxims. Work should not only be done, but it should be seen that it is done. That working paper management only implies that the work which you cannot show that you have performed is not performed at all. That means the paper, unless there is a paper to show that you have done the work, it means that you have not done the work. So whatever work is done, it should be documented. And who will document it, friends? Our staff, our articles. And how much time are we sparing for their training? Nil. Try to introspect this. We only keep on cursing the article that they are not sincere, they are useless, they are more obsessed with many other things, but not the work. We keep on blaming. But ultimately, we also should realize that they are absolutely, it is true that they are more obsessed with their examination, study, coaching classes and all. But at the same time, we have never done anything to arouse interest in their mind about the work and connect between the work and the theory which they have studied. So unless we do that, unless we train those people, so in fact in the peer review also there is a specific aspect seen which is as to how much you are spending or how much you are taking efforts for the training of the staff. Because unless the staff is trained, staff includes articles. Unless they are trained, you are not able to perform the work at all. Please remember this in mind. And then second is, faintest of ink is stronger than the strongest of memories. You may have super brilliant memory. You may have the memory which is rather like a photogenic thing. But then ultimately, what you remember has of no value, what you document has a value. Many people say, I have sent 100 messages to him, I have phoned him 1,000 times, but he is not responding. The only answer is that he has not written him even once. You write to him and then only you can say that, yes, I was not guilty of misconduct, I was not guilty of negligence because I have drawn his attention to a particular field. So, now this another image is that lack of proactiveness. We are always reactive. We always wake up at the 11th hour. And then since things are not happening, we always expect some extension of time. In fact, last many years, our energies were lost only begging to the finance minister for having additional time for the filing of returns. But now obsession with tax consideration. I'll share a very interesting case with you. Friends, there was a very reputed chartered accountancy firm, more than 75-year-old, and all systems were in place. Now this, of course, as I mentioned to you, it is not appearing on the slide. I'm just sharing with you the facts of the case. And we don't have good communication skills, so we are not able to say no to anyone. And therefore, then we invite trouble for ourselves. So the obsession of tax consideration. Now, friends, this firm were doing an audit of a private limited company for last 25 years. And that private limited company had only 2 shareholders who were brothers of each other. Now, as I told you, any commercial or financial relationship, some frictions, some disputes are bound to be there. Obviously, between the 2 brothers also, there was something, everything was not smooth. Everything was not sweet. This is the cause quite often for complaints against the chartered accountants. So this particular case, the firm was doing the audit of that particular private limited company for 25 years. And on one fine morning, when there was 4 or 5 days left for the submission of income tax return, the younger director, the younger brother who was holding 40% of the shares, enters the office of the CA and then say the relations were very smooth. So smilingly he said, sir, we have done the audit, you as usual, very nicely done, vagare, vagare. What I suggest is, now my elder brother is very busy. So you please put your signature on the balance sheet, give me, I will take it, I will obtain my brother's signature and we will submit the return so that there is no delay and you give it to me. Friends, this is the catch, where in good faith, many times, almost all of us put our signatures before the directors have signed, and that is taken undue advantage of. So, what this younger director did, he obtained his brother's signature, but never put his own signature. And therefore, the chartered accountant, and within a very short time, after submission of return, he filed complaints on 2 grounds against the chartered accountant. What were the 2 grounds? They are absolutely nightmarish and eye-opening. All the stories which I am telling you are not imaginary stories, but they are the things which I have actually handled. And those are actually nothing but the nightmarish things which actually may result in losing of your sleep. In fact, ever since I started handling these things, I have lost my sleep for last 25 years, and therefore I want that you also lose your sleep. Many people say, sir, aapka lecture is frightening. Yes, I want to make it frightening because without that, chartered accountants will not improve. Because any rule comes, our reaction of the chartered accountant first is to find loopholes. And our reaction is that, ye nahi karega to kya hoga? What is the penalty? So unless there is a threat of penalty, any average Indian, I'm not blaming chartered accountants community as such, but every average Indian mindset is that punishment या penalty क्या है वो देख के वो compliance करता है. They don't appreciate the spirit as that this should be complied with in the larger public interest. That thinking is not there. But this particular private limited company, now let me take it to the logical end. So he filed a complaint. First was that only 1 director had signed, and when the auditor also put his signature, 2 directors is the requirement of the law. Now friends, at this juncture, let me tell you that the company law requires, first and foremost thing is that the financial statement should be approved in the board meeting. That is of prime importance. Then after approval, the board authorizes 1, 2 or 3 directors to sign it on behalf of the board or on behalf of the company. And then the finally auditor signs. Therefore, signing by directors is a consequential thing, is a secondary thing. What is the prime importance is the approval in the board of meeting. Now, if you prove that yes, it was approved in the board of meeting, then the signatures of the directors become rather of secondary importance. But we people, chartered accountants, we do practically render every service to the client, including finalization of accounts and audit and MRL also we prepare. Then even the director's report also we prepare. We prepare everything and send it for signature. Please, even by mistake, don't put your signature first. And in all these paperwork, I appeal to you, friends, in your own safety, please get one maybe stereotype letter from each and every client, especially private limited company or limited companies, saying that these financial statements were approved in the board meeting held on such and such. This particular letter is of utmost importance to you. Friends, I've come across, let me first complete this story. So this is the first thing, that you should have You should never put your signature before the directors have signed or the partners have signed or the trustees have signed. This is the first mantra or lesson. Second is equally important. Second ground of appeal is rather an eye opener to all of us, and we need to introspect. He said, the director said, that one of the cars of the company belonged only to that elder brother in his personal name. It was registered in his personal name, not in the name of the company. And the auditor has not made any remark on that. Now I leave it to your own introspection as to how many of us verify the registration of vehicles. In fact, unfortunately, I have seen many chartered accountants who certify the assets, the capitalization, purely based only on ledger entries. Ledger extract means if there's a building which is capitalized or if it is a building which is purchased, they don't bother to see the original document of acquisition, document of construction of the building if it is done, then whether there is a certificate from that competent authority of the completion, then whether there is a proper capitalization of the interest, whether capitalization of some similar incidental factors, like if it is a machinery, the erection expenses, commissioning expenses, the experts, technology, consultants expenses, they are not bothered about all these things at all. They just go by ledger entries. But friends, ultimately, whenever you are certifying the assets of an entity, it is your basic duty to verify whether that asset really stands in the name of the, because here my point of tax obsession. What many people will try to argue with me and with the institute also, that income tax department allows depreciation even if it is held in a partner's name or a director's name. Well, in income tax department, because the thrust there is on the beneficial ownership of an asset, whereas here we are concerned with the legal ownership. And therefore you are supposed to, and you are obliged rather, to verify whether the asset really stands in the name of. That is why you have to verify so many documents. Therefore, let's go ahead. And now you will ask me in this particular story that if they have such a long relationship of 25 years, why did that person file a complaint against the chartered accountant? And if I share with you that fact, because see, in the books which are published by the institute, they will barely give these facts, and then it is an obvious conclusion that yes, there is a misconduct. Question is, why did he file a complaint? That is what happened behind the screen, behind the curtain, is what I am sharing with you. That ultimately that director had approached this firm with a request to accommodate his daughter as a dummy article, which the firm denied, and that is why, to have a vindictive thing, he filed this complaint. Therefore, you cannot afford to antagonize anyone. Our profession has become, such a thing which is taken for granted, that if people have so much of nuisance value, friends, there's so much of vulnerability. You have to be absolutely on your guard. And when people say that why this is thrust on us, this is thrust on us because the institute rightly and the council rightly wants to uphold the integrity and the reputation of and maintain the reputation of the profession. And therefore, anything that brings disrepute to the profession is also harmful to the entire profession, entire community. Therefore, this professional skepticism I'll give examples of, but now I've come across many things where even the appointment letter itself was missing. Now, because the law makes it compulsory that you have to upload it, we have started uploading. Otherwise, there was a time when people never even used to obtain the appointment letter. And then many people, particularly old generation chartered accountants, were feeling shy as to when you are communicating something with a client, they were feeling shy as to how we can obtain acknowledgement of that. They were afraid of that. But now the technology is at your command. So you can always send an email giving whatever instructions you want to give. Another thing is that many people are under an impression that this particular ethics and all apply only to the audit or attest function. They are mistaken, friends. Ethics apply equally to all facets of profession, including advisory services. Therefore, even in an advisory scenario, it is very imperative that you obtain physically, if it is feasible, you obtain appointment letter, but at least a request letter that please advise us on this. Then all the facts in a query, because many people try to obtain the opinion and advice on telephone. They make us work that they will give us an idea that they are selling some asset and all, and they want you to work on the capital gain aspect. And we will do it sincerely, and then later on they say that they have dropped that idea. So friends, whenever there is advisory query also, you insist that the query should be sent to you by email or something, it should be in writing. Then what working papers will include as to what counter questions you have asked, what are the further facts that you have asked for, then what are the things which you have relied on. All these things are your working papers. So working papers is a must. All the assignments that you do, then only you will be able to show. For example, you have relied on certain case law or some commentary on some expert's book. Then you have to narrate all that I have based on this, I am doing it. So the readings, there are three main publications, or rather 4 or 5 important publications, but this is a list which you can read at your leisure. But what I may try to mention here is that now Institute has brought out 3 volumes. Volume 1 is the one which is basically describe the basic philosophical background, the principles underlying the code of ethics, and those are based on the International Federation, that means IFAC standards, which are adapted to suit the Indian situation. So those are the volume 1. Volume 2 is the one which we are more familiar with, that means CA Act, CA regulation, rules, then the code of ethics, the disciplinary committee rules, all those things are there. And part 3, that is volume 3, contains all the case laws. But the case laws, I'll tell you that each case is a different case. There cannot be 2 identical cases. And therefore, the things, only principles you can decide. For example, the principle which I told you, that there is one more principle which is settled by the court. But if you try to use that for your defense, sometimes it boomerangs. Now, for understanding this, when I told you that many people are under an impression while doing in tax practice that what is the time barring? Because see, there are 2 schedules to the Act. What are these 2 schedules? Because Section 22, Chapter 5 of the Chartered Accountants Act contains the basic code about the disciplinary mechanism and the ethical part. Rest of the things are more of a procedural nature, but these particular things are core principles of the ethics. What are they? See, basically, Section 22 defines misconduct as any item stated in either of the 2 schedules. There are 34 items. In the first schedule, there are 19 items. In the second schedule, there are 15 items. So any one item out of these, they call it as item and not clause. Remember, these are items. So these 34 items are, any one of them is a professional misconduct. And then Section 22 also states that these 2 schedules and other misconduct. So other misconduct is a very wide term. Other misconducts includes anything that is unbecoming of a professional, anything that brings disrepute to the profession. And therefore, that is contained in part 4 of the first schedule. Now, basic distinction between first and second schedule is that first schedule items are considered to be of lesser gravity, lesser seriousness, because majority of them are concerning only the behavior of a chartered accountant within its own profession, our own profession. That means something which an outsider is not adversely affected. Take the example of previous auditor's communication. Now here outsider is not adversely affected. Ideally speaking, they may not even have locus standi to file a complaint against it, but still those complaints are entertained. That is an unfortunate part. But this first schedule, second is for another soliciting the clients, advertising the clients, or doing some business without permission of the institute. Now these are essentially first schedule offenses. First schedule offenses are considered a lesser gravity, and therefore the punishment for the first schedule offenses are little milder. Second schedule offenses are considered to be of more gravity, more serious, because outsiders' interests are affected. For example, your gross negligence or lack of due diligence, or you are not maintaining separate account for the client's money and you are using the client's money for your own benefit. Then you are certifying the financial statements of your relative without mentioning anything. Now, earlier, clause 4 was there, part 1 of second schedule, which permitted that you can certify the financial statements of a close relative also, provided you make a disclosure on the face of the report that he is my relative. Now that facility is gone. That means now you have no authority to certify the financial statements of your relative or your partner or the person where there is a conflict of interest. So remember this, and therefore you should not only be independent, but you should appear to be independent. So all your workings, all your working papers, all your therefore the relationship of an auditor and the auditee, this kind of relationship like brother, spouse or anything, that is now totally cut off. So please remember all these things. So first schedule and second schedule. Now let me start with, but before that, let me give you another good example of disciplinary things, because ultimately you have to be eternally vigilant and you cannot even imagine. That is why another next mantra which I give you is that every financial statement, every year, you obtain signatures of all directors, all trustees, all partners, all managing committee members, and there is a reason for it. See, ultimately from any group or any entity, only one person interacts with us, who is interested in the paperwork, who is actually serious about the compliances. The others are absolutely indifferent. They are either not bothered or they are not having the understanding of the paperwork, accounts, compliance and all. Sometimes there may be technocrats also. There may be some sleeping partners. They are inactive directors. So many other things. Only one or two persons interact with us, rather only one. Now in this scenario, what happens is, in a private limited company, that is greatest thing lacking in our profession is that we are least bothered about the secretarial compliances. In fact, company secretarial compliances are of utmost importance for our verification. The minutes, the attendance, even for your own appointment, you have to verify whether the notice was issued, whether the proper attendance was there, whether the quorum was there, whether minutes are properly recorded. All that is your own responsibility to ensure that your own appointment is validly done. But we are lacking in that, and then secretarial compliances, if we don't verify, then there are a lot of troubles. So please remember that these things, like in all the entities, all of them sign, because what they do is, they say that the meetings were never held. The directors, other directors blame, they disclaim everything, they disown that financial statements were never shown to us. There was never ever any meeting conducted. There were never any presentation of balance sheet to the meeting. Nothing was done. This particular director, one of their family members, he and the chartered accountants were hand in gloves with each other, and they have done something wrong. This is the stand normally taken by all other directors when there is some problem with their relationship or when there is an adversity. When there is an adversity in the company, all sorts of disputes arise. And therefore, then chartered accountant is made a scapegoat, saying that he had a collusion with that other director who was interacting with him, and we are not even aware of the balance sheet. This is the common cause of complaint, friends. And therefore, at least you can save yourself from this type of allegation. So insist on one master copy you have, hard copy, where you obtain the signatures of all the directors or trustees or managing committee members. This is your own self-interest, I'm telling you. So this is next thing which has come out of the experience. Another thing, many people are concerned with how much is the time barring. Time barring in the sense that because we keep on committing many such defaults, many items of misconduct, and then while listening to me, you might be also rather remembering or recollecting, अरे ये उधर मेरा सब लैप्स हो गया था, इधर मेरा लफड़ा हो गया था. Now then you are worried you are apprehending, when what is the time bar? How many years I have to maintain these records? Now, there are inquiry conduct rules, which is time barring by and large, if you want to say, it is by and large 7 years, which is but very loose type of time barring. There is no rigid or absolutely blanket time barring. Remember this, friends. When this time barring will protect you, when you can satisfy the authorities there, like the director discipline or the president, that because of the efflux of time for more than 7 years, you are not in a position to produce the satisfactory documentary evidence. Or if they are satisfied that it is otherwise impossible to take the complaint to the logical end. So there are two situations. One is that production of evidence is difficult, that they should be convinced. And secondly, it is otherwise not possible to take the complaint to the logical end. So these two situations. Now, if something is self-evident, something requires no other evidence, no other external evidence. Take the simple example that your balance sheet, its figures are not telling, two sides are not telling. This is self-evident. Or there are certain things in the which you have reported, there is a failure to report on certain important aspects like accounting standards and all. So that is also which is obvious. Anybody can say that yes, this is your audited financial statements and we have not certified these particular aspects. We have not even touched upon the accounting standards. We have not touched upon many other things. So this is, if it is self-evident, then there is no time barring, friends. No time barring. And I'll give you a very interesting example. One lady had prepared a will and she died after about 12 years after signing the will. Fortunately, she survived. When the situation of preparing a will was there, that time her health condition was bad. Therefore, the will was prepared, but then she survived. And she died after 12 years. Now, when the will was opened after her death, unfortunate part was that one chartered accountant had signed it as a witness, but that lady, the testator, had not signed it at all. Now, this exposed the chartered accountant to the conduct of the disciplinary case, because ultimately this is a false statement. When you are saying, say that you are witness, that means you say what? Your witness means that person has signed before me, and only thereafter you are supposed to sign. Remember the dates. When you are a witness, they should ideally the same date. Of course, technically you can argue that she signed in my presence, but you can actually put your signature later. There are, under the Indian Succession Act, there are cases like that. That's a different story. That's too much of technicality. On the other hand, when you are signing the balance sheet, it is not necessarily as a witness. The directors may sign the balance sheet today, you may sign it after 2 days also. There is no necessity that both of them are simultaneously done. So this is the distinction. When you are signing as a witness, that other person to whom you are witness has to necessarily sign before you. But friends, we are very loose in all this. And therefore, good faith we do. And in the good faith, we expect that after later on, these people will go and obtain that lady's signature. It never happens. Even the balance sheets also, when we sign and give it to the directors for their signatures, we never keep track of whether those balance sheets are coming back to us duly signed by them. Because you must hold a master copy which is compliant, that under the company that whosoever is required to sign, he has to sign. There, I'll tell you another instance as to how you just can't imagine as to for what reason you are exposed to a disciplinary case. Very interesting example, friends. You know, there are executor and trustee companies. Now, executor and trustee companies, their function is what? They are executing the wills of their clients after the demise of those clients, especially when you have large estates. And nowadays, because of this Kali Yuga and because of the nuclear families, you don't have a proper successor. You don't have a proper person who will execute your will. Now, this is today's society's condition is that way. Therefore, you have to be very careful, because you don't find your nephew or any person of, you can have a trust in him that he will execute your will properly. You don't find anyone. Therefore, all these, especially when large estates are there, are entrusted to these corporate executives, a corporate executive and trustee company. So that means what they do is, after the will, they actually execute the will. One such will was being executed by the that company, and the daughter of that testator means the person who has made the will, his daughter was interacting with the company about the interpretation of the will. And she was saying that that particular clause should be interpreted in such a way so that she would get more property from her father. Unfortunately, officer did not respond to her request. Then she wrote to the directors and asked them to intervene, that the management is not properly, or the managers and officers are not interpreting the will properly. But the directors also did not heed to her appeals or requests. So she was wild. She was rather vindictive. And then what she did, she engaged some other chartered accountant just with the intention to teach a lesson to the directors. See, her intention is to teach a lesson to the directors. She filed because that other chartered accountant, he brought out some highly technical shortcomings from the financial statement, which were not affecting the true and fair view at all. Firstly, that means the financial statements were not wrong at all in that sense. And at the same time, which had nothing to do with her grievance, because her grievance was the interpretation of her father's will. Whereas she filed a complaint to the MCA, to the ROC authority, saying that this chartered account means the accounts are not true and fair, not proper. There are lacunae in the financial statements. So she filed a complaint. Now ROC had to summon the directors and the auditors, and all of them appeared. And then he realized that this is a frivolous complaint. Her ulterior motive is something else. This is only a vindictive thing that she wants to harass the directors. She wants to teach a lesson to the directors. So, but ROC said, okay, let us compound it. It was a compoundable offense. So everybody paid 5,000 rupees, all 4 directors and even chartered accountant paid 5,000 rupees. All directors are scot-free. They are relaxing, but the chartered accountant is facing the music of this disciplinary mechanism. Why? Because all these regulators have a tendency nowadays that whenever they come across any such irregularity or insufficiency or deficiency in the financial statement certified by an auditor, they and since there is no other revenue effect or revenue loss, that means they are not otherwise losing anything. Therefore, instead of making a complaint, they just pass on all such things as cases for information. So this is very rampant nowadays, friends. Even if the revenue is not affected, still you have to, I mean, these people like non-national stock exchange authorities, SEBI, RBI, even if they find that there is no revenue loss, still if there are any lacunae in the financial statements, they keep on passing on the information to the institute. And therefore, this poor fellow, chartered accountant, is faced with the music of the disciplinary committee for last 5 to 6 years, because it takes at least 3 to 4 years for any complaint to attain a reasonable disposal stage. Therefore, this is very, very hurting, friends. Very, very rather, I would say that because, and you cannot argue that this has nothing to do with this, because there are certain principles which I deal with. But so firstly, there are 2 schedules. Let me complete this particular slide. Disciplinary Directorate. Now, there are 4 authorities under the Act. So 4 authorities under the Act mean Disciplinary Directorate, because they are basically bureaucrats. Director Discipline is the administrative head of this department of disciplinary mechanism. And then there are many employees there who are basically qualified as chartered accountants or sometimes as lawyers, and they examine all the complaints. So this is the first stage where your complaints are first processed. Then there is Board of Discipline. Board of Discipline is the one which deals with first schedule offenses, which are of relatively lesser gravity. Disciplinary committee, because many people, they don't know the distinction, so they loosely describe everything as disciplinary committee. But disciplinary committee deals with the second schedule offenses. And the last one is the appellate authority. So appellate authority is ultimately, if you are not happy or not satisfied with the decision of the board of discipline or the disciplinary committee, you can file an appeal there. Now, this professional skepticism, let me deal with that, because see, this is endless topic, as I told you, and we have to complete it within a very short time. But I have to also wish to share with you the recent experience of NAFRA, because our profession has become so vulnerable, friend, that you do anything and there is some kind of misconduct or the other. Many people say, "Arey, my career, last 30 years I had an unblemished career because I have not received any such complaint against me." The reaction of the institute or the council is that please consider yourself as lucky that there was no complaint against you. Because remember, friends, every day we are committing some lapse or the other which may be construed as misconduct. Unfortunately, in the present scenario, they are also not able to properly distinguish between an error and a misconduct. High courts have held that every error is not a misconduct, because ultimately we are human beings. Even a blunder is not a misconduct. Even a negligence is not a misconduct. What is important is gross negligence. Gross negligence is the one which means that there is either some ill motive or element of dishonesty. That is what the courts have held. But if you argue this, then the counter argument from the council or counter argument from the disciplinary committee is equally forceful and valid. They say that what do you mean by ill motive or dishonesty? Does it necessarily mean that by dishonestly you are stealing something or committing a fraud? See, ultimately, for example, take some of your friend who is very, very honest, a man of integrity, but he is not, he is a technocrat. He brings his financial statements before you. Now you know him very closely, so you know that he will never commit anything hanky-panky, and you can certify his balance sheet. If you do that without verification, that itself is dishonesty. Why? Because our code clearly says that if you put your signature without verification, remember, friends, your signature should be hallmark of your credibility. That whenever they say that signature is put by a chartered accountant, that means the world is assured that he has done it after verification. If you have not done without verification, then why this audit should be done by auditor, chartered accountant at all? Anybody can then, if you are doing everything in good faith. For example, in the big scam that is for in your state, that was Satyam Corporation. There also, when it was argued that there's such a large thousands of crores of fixed deposit, and if that corporate was so reputed that it had won the Golden Peacock Award for governance, and if they are showing something in their balance sheet, which they are also showing us the receipt about the thousands of crores of fixed deposit, then it was argued before the then finance minister that should we not trust them. Then the finance minister reacted that if for a deposit of 10,000 crore rupees, if the society at large cannot depend on the auditor's certificate or audited balance sheet, then why is audit required at all? You do everything in good faith. Remember, friends, in a small trust, there are many cases coming that chartered accountants in good faith do not verify the original investment documents. And when the company or the trust says that those are kept in the bank's locker, there are recent instances where the fraudulent people, because of paucity of time, I cannot describe all those cases in great detail. But what happened was there are some managers or trusted people or sometimes even treasurer, office bearer, or one of the trustees who was handling the financial matters. He misused the signatures, he misused the good faith and the trust of the people at the helm of affairs. And what he did, or those many people, there are many such cases, they encashed the fixed deposits, got it credited in the trust account, and in the trust, from the trust account, again in good faith, they could obtain the check signed by those committee members, and that check was exact amount was transferred to their personal account. Therefore, there was a contra entry and the balance was unaffected. And both these entries were masked by them while taking the photocopies of the bank statements. Remember, friends, that the professional skepticism, large corporates, 10,000 crore turnover, closing stock 600 crores, all the auditors and all the professional team highly qualified and reputed. Now those companies come to some roadside chartered accountant, some that also in a different state sometimes, and they lure him by telling that you just sign our stocks, 600 crore stocks within 3-4 days, and we will pay you a very handsome amount, say even 1 lakh rupees. Now this new chartered accountant, he thinks, अरे इतना बड़ा corporate है, इतना reputed है, listed company है, सब all is there, auditors and all very big shots are there, then stocks भी होगा proper. But he never thinks, that thought never occurs to his mind कि इतना बड़ा corporate मेरे जैसे small chartered accountant के पास क्यों आया? For the certification, they have an army of chartered accountants working for them. Why did some companies management sitting in Ahmedabad approach some chartered accountant in Borivali, Mumbai for signing? For example, when I happen to be a director of a small scheduled cooperative bank, when large corporates approach us for loan, our first question is as to why they are coming to us. Are the big banks are not entertaining them? Or their accounts, there is some manipulation so that they feel they are under an impression that they can easily deceive the small cooperative banks. Is that the scenario? So this professional skepticism is of utmost importance, friends, and therefore I would rather appeal to you that you should be very careful about it. So there are many and dozens of instances which I'll give, but I'll give you one very important example of third-party evidence. Well, this slide, let us go to the next slide so that at least, again, next. Now, remember, this is the board of, let me complete the theory part of it. The board of discipline, it consists of these 3 members, 2 central council members and 1 government nominee. But now that combination is being changed under the amended act. Then disciplinary committee consists of 5 members, which are 2 are central council members, 2 are government nominees, and it is presided over by, the first is presided over by any eminent person in the field of law and this thing, but law and economics. Normally, our president or vice president or a senior member of the council is presiding over that. Whereas in the disciplinary committee, the president or the vice president is presiding over it. There are 2 government nominees and 2 members of the council. Next, the appellate authority. The appellate authority consists of, it is actually presided over by a high court judge. And then there are 2 ex-members of the central council who have completed the full year term of 3 years. So that is another condition. And 2 government nominees. So this is by and large the constitution. Then the procedural part, I'll skip I'll just quickly go through it. But these important principles I wanted to deal, which is very important today for my presentation. Remember, friends, misconduct proceedings are initiated either on receiving a complaint or information. Now, what is the difference between information and complaint? When there is a complaint, the complainant continues to be in the picture until the disposal of the complaint. That means when I deal with the procedures that you will come to know. Whereas when there is information, now for example, I told you that many people pass on the things just like information to the institute, especially the regulatory authorities like ROC, Income Tax Department, GST Department, SEBI, Stock Exchange Authorities, Cooperative Society, Cooperative Department. Certain things they pass on just as information. They don't come with the complaint. So then council writes to them, the disciplinary directorate writes to them whether you want to pass just information or whether you want to complain. Why the distinction is that if it is only information, then the matter means the institute is seized of the matter, and they say that we will inform you only the last outcome of the proceedings. You are out of the picture. That means the informant is not a part of the proceedings later on. He has just इसने काड़ी लगाया और again proceeding start हुआ, but he is out of the picture. Then he is only informed of the outcome as to whether that respondent was held guilty or not. But they are not in the picture in the proceeding. They are not the part of the proceeding. So this is the difference between complaint and information. Then there could be a suo motu thing also. Suppose there is some press report, but just out of by press report or the social media news, institute doesn't or the council doesn't act, because then they do some basic verification. Then complainant need not come with clean hand. This is very important, friends. Many people say that when there is a complaint, they try to counter-attack the complainant. They say that a complainant himself is a badmash person and that he is a dishonest person, he is a criminal. Remember that even if the complainant is a confirmed convict criminal, even if he is behind bars or even if he is outside on bail, whatever, or even in the media, he is known, everybody knows that he is a most criminal person. Still, council rightly says that we are not concerned with that, because for that there are other forums to tackle with this. Our concern is that upholding and maintaining the reputation of the profession. So let the member show us that he has acted properly. The council's view is very narrow, but which is justified. They say that we don't have jurisdiction over the entire world. We have jurisdiction only on the members. So if there is a complaint or information, let us verify whether the respondent, that means against whom the complaint is filed, he has acted properly or not as per the institute guidelines, law and other things. So what is important from the council, and for us also that is important as a professional. Why? Because that upholds the reputation of the profession. Suppose the particular chartered accountant is held guilty because of misbehavior, what will happen is the entire profession's image is tarnished. Therefore, it is not necessary. They say that council wants to decide whether that person is fit to continue as a member. That is their approach. Secondly, council is not concerned with the locus standi of the complaint. Now, this principle, very important principle, of late, they have started recognizing this. Otherwise, locus standi in the sense that a person who is complaining may be an absolute stranger. He may not be a shareholder, he may not be a director, he may not be an employee, he is not a regulator, he is not a lender, he is not a borrower, he is not a customer, supplier, nothing. He has no role to play whatsoever in your company, and still he can file a complaint, was the principle all these years. Even today that principle still holds good. But still of late, they have started recognizing the principle that if you have no locus standi, then we won't entertain. Friends, unfortunately, there are professional blackmailers also active in this. Therefore, they pick up any financial statement and they try to harass us. So perhaps our institute is now also on the guard against these unscrupulous people, so that they have made locus standi as at least they are recognizing this principle. Not that it is an absolutely foolproof defense. So don't be under an impression that any third party or any stranger cannot complain. He can still complain, because then institute can always entertain it as an information, because it's not necessary that they should treat it as a complaint. It can be treated as information. So then where they are seized of the information, then they can easily commence the proceedings. Then now first time ever they have introduced, but all these things are yet to be implemented. I believe that the date has not been notified, that if it is a frivolous complaint, friends, there are so many frivolous complaints, very, very frivolous, absolutely meaningless complaints are there. And then the director discipline has been now given a power to reject them at the threshold itself. So this is very welcome, but how far it will be really used, I have my own doubts. But because the pendency is very high, there are complaints, dozens of complaints are getting filed every month. And therefore, the pendency high, now they have created 4 benches to tackle that. So this is the magnitude of the complaint, because people have realized the nuisance value. Any Tom, Dick and Harry files a complaint against the chartered accountant. And therefore, anyone can file. I'll give you a very good example of how, because of the disputes, how chartered accountants come into trouble and who files a complaint. See, A was a chartered accountant, B was an engineer, both were very close friends. Now, A had maintained his COP just out of sentimental reasons, because he was not actually practicing, because the company was doing growing business and they, 2 of them were executive directors. So, but he had maintained his COP. Now, B was an engineer, his son wanted to do his CA, so he did it under A. Articleship was done under A. Maybe you can say that it must be a dummy articleship or whatever, because he had some small assignments, not that he was actively practicing, but he had some assignments. Now, that boy passed his CA and he took up some corporate job. Thereafter, as I told you, and remember those words of mine always in your mind, that any commercial or financial relationship, howsoever close it may be, ultimately results into some friction or the dispute, because the times change. There are very, very few instances where only to prove the exception that the friendship and the love and affection continued forever. So that thing is the reality of life in this Kali Yuga. Therefore, A and B had a dispute. But it may be that there was some adversity in the company. So the dispute was so acute that there were cross complaints from on every forum, like CLB, then High Court, Civil Court, Criminal, Magistrate, Arbitration, whatever thing you can think of, where there were proceedings. And to add fuel to that fire, B's son, he filed a complaint against A, under whom he did his articles, friends, under whom he did his articles, his own mentor, his own principal. He filed a case that he was acting as an executive director of the company without obtaining the permission of the institute. So to this extent, now people are going. That means what happened was, the managing the disciplinary committee, they told that boy, because see, this Mr. A had absolutely no defense, because it was a fact that last 25 years he was acting as an executive director, and he was signing the balance sheet, he was signing all the documents, he was signing the checks, everything. So there was no way in which he could escape. The disciplinary committee reprimanded that boy, saying that this was not in good taste, but ultimately A suffered. So this is the reality of life. Some next principles. Next part of the principles is that now this 7 years, as I told you, but 7 years, please remember that it is difficult to obtain evidence on account of time lag, or that it would be, the proceedings would be, to continue the proceedings would be inconvenient. So that is the reason, that is the ground on which they can refuse to entertain a complaint. Even if respondent compensates, this is one more very important principle, that it is not relevant as to whether anybody is adversely affected because of your misconduct. This is very important. Means negligence. You cannot say that, yes, my error was there, my blunder was there, but nobody is adversely affected. That defense you cannot take. Counsel expressed that your work should be absolutely perfect in all respects. And I'll give you 2 examples where nobody is really affected and still you are susceptible to the disciplinary mechanism. Take 2 examples. One is, suppose you have certified the balance sheet of a concern, and on the basis of that, bank has advanced loan to that party. The loan was serviced very regularly and the loan was closed also. So nobody is really affected. Still, if the banker realizes or notices that there was some flaw in the financial statements which you have audited, he can still file a complaint, and you cannot make an argument that bank is not adversely affected, bank has not lost anything. Counsel's perception is that that is irrelevant. You show us whether you have done the right job. Sometimes you feel that this is too much of an expectation, but yes, to some extent they are right, because ultimately the banker has thought it fit to file a complaint. Similarly, another good example, there is a charitable trust, 100% tax-free trust, which is confirmed by the assessment and appeals and everywhere, so there is no doubt about it. And if you have committed some lapse in the certification of that audited financial statements, then even then the income tax department, although there is no loss to the revenue, still the income tax department can file a complaint. Same logic. But whether because of your lapses anybody is affected or not is immaterial. Now, secondly, even if somebody is affected and you go and compensate him. Now, there were cases where actually that because of the wrong advice, say under the Income Tax Act, you don't notice the implications of Section 50C, the stamp duty value, or Section 56, the deemed gift or deemed income. And because of that, the client suffers, because there are practical instances of these cases. The client suffers. He has to pay interest, tax, penalty, and all so many things, and plus the headache. Now, if that thing is there that you have committed a lapse, you are not given a proper advice. So what you do is you compensate that person. That say, because of me, you have suffered so much of loss. I'll pay you all this money. I'll making good to your loss. Plus, on the top of it, I'm paying you compensation. Even then, you cannot undo what has been done. That means your lapse has already been done. It has occurred. You cannot undo it by compensating him. In fact, on the contrary, your compensating will again prove that you are accepted, you are admitted the fault. Therefore, remember, friends, that this is one of the very important principles as to how do you, many chartered accountants say that yes, in this balance sheet I have committed a lapse, but in the next year's balance sheet I have covered it up. That is also no defense, because ultimately each year's balance sheet is separate. Next year you may not be the auditor also. Or sometimes because of your first balance sheet, the people have done taken some decisions. So next year you have corrected that thing, or next year you have rectified, has no meaning, technically speaking. Although it might be a good ground sometimes for considering the punishment, but technically speaking, it doesn't hold any water. Even if nobody is aggrieved, that I told you. And the last one is that the disposal, there is no time barring provided for the disposal of the complaint. Although there are attempts to expedite it, but still the proceedings can continue even for 5 to 6 years also. So this is, in short, these are the basic principles. Next, some cases, a broad procedure means the complaint is there. After that, complaint is sent to the respondent. Respondent has to send a written statement, that is his explanation. Remember that if the complaint is against any particular firm, then the first director asks them as to who is the person answerable on this complaint. The signatory to the balance sheet will obviously be answerable, but if the actual work is carried out by somebody else, like for example in a big firm there are a big hierarchy, like managers, senior partners, junior partners, then directors, managers, even employees, chartered accountants are there, all these. So when they have a system of identifying as to which particular aspect was verified by whom, and then even the employee of the chartered accountant is deemed to be in practice whenever these things are revealed. There, for example, the sales, there are some lacunae in the sales verification. Then those people, they are having their working papers intact. They say they can identify as to who had done the sales audit or verification. So they say that he is the person answerable. Likewise, in a small firm like ours, you cannot identify as to who had done a particular job. And we don't maintain a proper work record at all. We don't maintain time sheet. So we are lacking in that record keeping. But we have to learn something, because the first thing that the institute asks when there is a disciplinary case, where are your working papers? Right from appointment letter, they go, now let me also mention that the NAFRA cases, because now NAFRA has created a lot of panic in the profession. Many firms are debarred, then there are huge amounts of penalties So let me explain to you one or two instances of NAFRA, which actually reveal certain common lapses of the our professional community. See, you know DHFL. DHFL, the bubble was burst in the year 1718. DHFL had a practice that they used to appoint chartered accountants as statutory auditors, and then they also used to appoint the internal auditors for their branches. They had some 200 odd branches. Internal auditors or branch auditors, not internal, so branch auditors were appointed. Now, they used to write, last 15 years this was a practice, that they used to write to the chartered accountant saying that these branches are allotted to you, just as a bank branch audit. These branches, you are supposed to address your report to the statutory auditors, and the methodology is also given in the appointment letter, and you have to verify these things and you have to report to the statutory auditors, and your remuneration will be paid by the company. This was the standard appointment letter issued to all chartered accountants. Maybe some 40-50 chartered accountants were there. The 17-18 financial year, when everything, this particular bubble was burst and there was fraud was very obvious and it came to the surface, then they woke up. And then the NAFRA notification was issued in November 18 to take care of such instances. Now, interestingly, the NAFRA wrote to all the the branch auditors pointing out their lapses, but two of them are very important, very relevant to us for our day-to-day practice. One is that they said that the statutory auditors were appointed in the AGM, but you were appointed by the board. Under the 2013 Act, this was permissible under the 56 Act, but under 2013 Act, even the branch auditors are also required to be appointed by the AGM. Now, this fact, hardly any chartered accountant would actually be, he might have studied it, but he may not be actually aware while doing the practice. So they say that your appointment itself is invalid because you have been appointed by the board, whereas you should have been appointed in the AGM. So this is the first. And secondly, they said that no, you have not issued any engagement letter. Now, friends, in the first place, we were not very keen on taking the appointment letter properly. Properly, I'm saying, using the word properly. Any such appointment letter which doesn't specify or which does not stick to the norms of the appointment, that whether you are appointed by board, you are appointed by the general body, or in what manner you are getting appointed, who are the previous auditor, what are the other norms, all that is actually missing in that appointment letter. So that you should be very careful. Now, this, you are then every auditor is supposed to write an engagement letter to the client company. That engagement letter, it is mandatory now. Standard on Auditing 210 makes it mandatory. Very few of us are aware of this. Now, what is the content of that? They have given us specimen also. Institute's publication has given us the specimen as to what is the purpose. Now, for example, in our report, we write that it is primarily the management's responsibility to complete the accounts and all those things which we write. Management says nobody has told us this. According to the management, everything is chartered accountant's responsibility. So you should bring to their notice then what is the methodology that you adopt, how many locations you will visit, how much staff you will deploy. All those things, engagement letter should make it clear to the management. If it is a repetitive assignment, then you need not write. But otherwise, all those factors of the, for example, there are the stocks verification. Then how many places you will be visiting, who is your team members, all that should be specified in the engagement letter. In fact, the independent standards requires that you should obtain a declaration from all your staff and the articles that they don't have any conflict of interest with the particular assignment. Now, all this is too theoretical for a small and average chartered accountancy firm. I understand that. But understand the spirit behind it. That to this extent now, the independent standard is being implemented. So in the peer review and all, you should be able to verify whether there are such internal documentation are there. Now, I'll come to the next few cases. As far as possible, friends, cooperative societies work. One should avoid if it is possible. I understand that for a metropolitan city it is may be possible, but in the upcountry where there are not much corporate assignments are available, that time you have no choice, but cooperative sector is very active there. But remember that in a cooperative society, usually there is nothing but non-cooperation. Therefore, people are, they're crazy. In fact, they file complaints. Auditor is the most easy to make a scapegoat. So anything happens, the first victim is a chartered accountant. Any NPA takes place, especially in large banks, private banks and national or PSU bank, the first victim is the chartered accountant. But as far as procedure is concerned, because these are, interwoven or interlinked things, whatever I am telling you, because once you write an explanation, that your explanation goes to the complainant. Complainant writes a rejoinder. After these three documents are received, that means the complaint, your basic statement, like a written statement, and the rejoinder, then they scrutinize the file, the director discipline, and then scrutinize the file, and they can identify some additional requirements which are basically in the nature of facts or information or document, not any explanation as such, which they ask for from either of the party or both the parties. Once that the explanation comes, then the director discipline arrives at what is called as prima facie opinion, whether prima facie this respondent is guilty or not. There could be 8 or 10 allegations. He may say that on 6 allegations is not prima facie guilty, on 4 is prima facie guilty. Now, his prima facie opinion is to be presented before the Board of Discipline or the disciplinary committee, depending on whether it is a first schedule offense or a second schedule. Then, after the concurrence of the first, the Board of Discipline or the disciplinary committee, because the Board of Discipline or DC, they may either entirely agree. For example, the director discipline may feel that he is not guilty at all under any clauses. So they may agree. Then the letter is sent that case is closed if you are not found guilty on any of the allegations. But if you are found guilty on some of the allegations, then the board or the committee may decide, they may disagree with the director discipline. They may say, no, you have held him not guilty in 6, but according to us, he is not guilty only in 5. Remaining 5 is guilty. So anything can happen. Accordingly, once you are held guilty, even on one count, then there will be a hearing. Hearing will be either the Board of Discipline or the disciplinary committee, depending on the which schedule. But if it is a common first and second schedule, then obviously it will be before the disciplinary committee. Then prima facie opinion on, and they give you opportunity to put your claims to whatever you want to say. One thing is that they are very liberal as far as, because see friends, they are more concerned with the merits and the substance. The procedural things, as we experience in Income, that it should be done in 30 days, it should be done in so many days and all, they are not rigid. That doesn't mean that you should take liberty, but they say that you maintain the decency, you maintain the professional decorum, you maintain the professionalism. In fact, not responding to any correspondence is also considered as an unprofessional thing. Many people try to seek some information from the auditor, and auditor knows that he is not supposed to give that information. Unfortunately, he doesn't write to that person that I am not able to give this information because I am not permitted because of the ethics. But they don't write. Therefore, that person who is seeking information, his ego is hurt. And many complaints arise out of this hurting of the ego. They say that this chartered accountant does not have even the courtesy to write back to us. So even if it is yes, no, denial, whatever, I will always have a practice that you write a reply. This otherwise is construed that this much basic professionalism is also you are lacking. Now then, this BOD and disciplinary committee, they give the findings. Both parties are examined, actual hearing takes place, evidences are examined, all that thing takes place, and they make a finding or the report. Based on that report, if you are held guilty, even on one count, then one more opportunity is given to you as to what punishment should be awarded. Now that what are the punishments? This procedure, okay, now again we'll go ahead with the punishments. For the first schedule offense, the next punishments are of 3 types. Next. Punishments are of 3 types. One is reprimand or a fine not exceeding 1 lakh, which is now raised to 2 lakhs, and suspension up to, earlier it was 3 months, but now it is being increased to 6 months. And there is one more very interesting fact they have. Remember that council does not have jurisdiction as far as disciplinary cases are concerned over a firm. They have jurisdiction only on individual member. But they have brought a very peculiar clause now that if at all any partner of a firm is held guilty under any clause, and within a 5-year span, again some other partner is also held guilty, then the council has power directly to punish the firm. So there is no proceedings against the firm, but here they can directly punish. So this is very peculiar thing that they have added. Then the second schedule offense punishments are similar: reprimand, suspension for any length of time. It can be even for life also, and fine up to rupees 5 lakhs, which is now proposed to be increased to 10 lakhs. And the same thing which I have mentioned also applies here. Now I will give you 2 instances, very important instances, because now the time is running out. 2 important cases I will deal with in this my presentation, and then if time permits, you may have a couple of questions, because I am repeating that the time is too short for me to cover all those things. But friends, there was a very, very huge company with more than hundreds of crores of turnover, and they had some mines somewhere in Orissa. The corporate office was in Mumbai, and there was 50 to 60 staff in the corporate office. Turnover was huge. There was a loan taken from a PSU bank, a term loan, and it became NPA. As soon as any unit becomes an NPA, all these big banks have a standard practice of filing a complaint of misconduct against the chartered accountant. They claim that they have given the finance based on the audited balance sheets. Although in reality, there must have been some collusion between the management of the company and the concerned management of the personnel of the bank. It is very likely. Now, what happened was, when the complaint was filed, the respondent firm approached me, and I saw the institute asked, you show that you have done the proper audit. So working paper, how do I show it? By working papers. So working papers, they had maintained excellent working papers. So I submitted all the working papers, and I was very happy, because it was a learning for even myself कि अरे मैं भी इतना working paper नहीं रखता हूँ इतना properly. Then they said, and they came back after about 1.5 years, saying that now institute has asked them only 2 questions. One is whether you had written to the bank for the confirmation of the transactions or the balances. That is one. And secondly, whether you had written to the debtors and creditors for confirmation of balances. Now, friends, about the first thing they told me that though we did not write to the bank, all the bank statements, photocopies are with us. So then I said, very nice. So that you can send it. But then they told us that, sir, this was a CBI case, and even the bank statements, a few of them were fabricated. And that fabrication work was done at the head office of this company. So remember that third-party evidence is important. And they said debtors, creditors, we had not verified. Now, year after year, we keep on writing that the confirmed balances of debtors, creditors, lenders, etc. are subject to confirmation, but we never even tried to obtain those confirmations. So third-party evidence is important. And secondly, most important part in this was that in many such instances, if you write to the bank and try to verify the bank statements, but there are sometimes many, apart from the fact, see why I am pointing this out is that in the 2006 Act, earlier there was only gross negligence, but now they have added gross negligence and lack of due diligence. I am bringing out this distinction. Insofar as they obtained the bank statements, you cannot say that they are grossly negligent, because basic procedure they have followed, audit procedure, standard. But insofar as they did not obtain the third-party evidence, that was lack of due diligence. Why this is important, friends? Had they done it when there are sudden increases, inflation of the turnover, inflation of the profit, then you should smell something. That is professional skepticism. Suddenly, when during COVID all the businesses are going down, how is your company is making good business and profit? So this question should be asked. And in this, what happens is after you ask the questions, then once you feel that yes, there is something wrong going on, there could be circular transactions within the group. So many things happen. And this you are supposed to, so this is the difference between gross negligence and lack of due diligence. Had you applied your diligence, probably big scams would have been exposed much earlier. And it is in the national interest, it is in the social interest that you apply this. You don't say only your compliance, but don't try to accommodate the client unnecessarily. Otherwise, you are yourself coming into trouble. There are many frauds occurring this way. Now, I'll deal with the last case. So many things I have to share with you, but last case as to exact distinction between a purely legalistic thing and an ethical thing. Doesn't mean that whatever is legal, whatever happens in legal proceedings is equally binding on the ethical thing. Ethics are something different from law always. It's not that law and it go together, but ultimately there is some fine distinction between, there is a demarcating line where law ends when the ethics starts. See, a person gave to help his cousin a check which he was aware that it was not going to be presented, but on the strength of that check, that particular brother or cousin had planned to raise finances from the market. Now, to help that brother, he had given the check. But that brother to whom or cousin to whom the check was given was of not good character. So nobody obliged him. So what he did, he deposited the check, got it bounced, and he filed a complaint under section 138 of the Negotiable Instruments Act against his own chartered accountant cousin. And he managed whatever, and ultimately this chartered accountant was held guilty, he was convicted, and there was 6 months imprisonment. This matter went to the institute as a disciplinary case because bringing disrepute to the profession. Now this CA friend has obviously contested it in appeal. Now in appeal, what happens is perhaps he will be acquitted because they had given a check of 50 lakhs rupees. Now the entire story I don't have time to tell you. But ultimately, I'll give you a parallel example. If because of your wrong advice, there is some penalty levied on some client under the Income Tax Act, you, in the appeal, you manage the penalty in whatever way you like, or there could be some kar vivad samadhan, or there could be something like, technical flaw in the issuance of the notice of the penalty. There are so many court decisions and all. Somehow you manage to get the penalty dropped. Now, what happened in law, legal proceeding under income tax is not necessarily binding on the ethical proceedings. Why? Because they say that, see, ultimately the fact that you have committed something wrong because of which the penalty was levied is a fact, because you did not advise him properly on section 50C or 56 or whatever. So that lapse has already occurred, your negligence has already occurred. The settlement of the penalty is not of consequence to you. And there are two ethical aspects in issuing the check. Firstly, when you issued the check, there was no adequate balance in your account. And while issuing the check, you were very much aware that that check was not going to be presented. At the same time, it would have misled some other person that suppose this person, CA, has given a check of 50 lakhs, then other person may think that a chartered accountant has given him a check of 50 lakhs, so there would be no harm even if I lend him 5 lakhs rupees. This would have misled some other persons. So on these counts, an ethical issue can be brought out, but legalistically, probably he will be acquitted. So friends, this is just now all that I can say within this short span of couple of hours. But I must thank Mr. Ravi Kishorji, Mr. Srinivasa Rao, Mr. Jayant, all the office bearers and the managing committee members of your Vijayawada branch. I also thank Anujji for gracing this occasion by his august presence, giving the introductory remarks. And I thank all the audience who are still there with some patience online for sharing whatever what I was trying to share, for their patient hearing. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind. If there are very small queries, I can answer.
Definitely, sir. We have one query in the chat box by CA Satish Penkonda. He's asking whether it is permissible to affix the new CA logo to the glass door of a chartered accountant cabin.
Sorry, I didn't get it.
A chartered accountant has affixed the CA logo on the glass door, entrance glass door of his cabin.
What is the board?
These stickers, some are putting on the glass door. Is it permissible?
It is cabin, no?
Considering the code of ethics.
In the cabin, no? That means in his office only, no?
To the office door.
Office door outside.
Yes, sir. When I enter into a cabin, on the door, that CA logo will be appearing.
CA logo, that is permissible. CA logo means of the institute, no?
Yes, yes.
That is permissible. Even that you can use even on your stationery also. Because this office door, see, what is permitted is undue publicity as a chartered accountant. So suppose he is mentioning something which is, is projecting the name of the firm, and which is a very large size letter that he is using, which is not considered as in good taste. But the CA logo on the cabin glass door is always permissible. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah. So, sir, thank you very much, sir. I should appreciate all your 40 years of experience and dealing with DC cases is demonstrated this day. But definitely, while hearing to you, I definitely thought that your reading of Ramayana, Mahabharata, and Bhagavad Gita, definitely the text, the way in which you spoke, the way in which you gave the examples, definitely that has been reflected in what you have said today, sir. Thank you very much. And you have quoted many live examples, and also dare enough to give a statement that independence is a myth as far as the CA profession is concerned, and only we have to do the due diligence and demonstrate that we have acted independently. And also the thing what you told about the professional skepticism, you have to definitely question when a very big company come to you, and also many examples what you have quoted. Very great insights we have got, sir. On behalf of the managing committee and on behalf of all the participants, I thank you very much for addressing us.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. All the best to you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, and we wish you come to Vijayawada sometime in the future.
Certainly, I will be very happy to do that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because the way in which you deliver and the vast experience you have, definitely it should benefit our members, sir. And also, I want to tell you one thing. Our session is also recorded, and Vijayawada branch has a YouTube channel with 26,000 subscribers. It will be beneficial to the persons who have not joined this. We will be sharing the video link in our WhatsApp group.
Yes, welcome. Yes, yes. I hope it gives some good message to the others, and overall lot of our professional will improve.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Signing off for you now. Good night, everyone.
Yes. Good night.